There you go.
There it is.
All right.
Okay, great. So yeah, I worked with the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals on their advocacy division this summer. So as COVID encroached on us, the state legislature was really focused on policy that was directly related to COVID. So because of that, I focused mostly on local change. So what this meant was primarily towns would come to us, or residents of towns would come to us when they had local ordinances on their town meetings, and we would work with them to provide information for their town meetings so that we could try and get the vote through. So for this, I primarily worked on Wilmington, where they were trying to pass a ban on exotic animals in traveling shows, and Holliston, as Dr. Ruppert knows, where they were banning puppy mill sales from pet stores, or puppies from puppy mills in pet stores. And how I was involved with Wilmington, it was a lot of cold calling. So I would call our constituents and give them information on the town meeting, keep them informed on how exotic animals in traveling shows are treated and how this could affect them or their town's public health. And I found out their interest level on the topic, if they would be interested in going to the town meeting and voting, or if they wanted to send an email to their local legislature. In Holliston, it was the same thing. It was a little bit of cold calling, but I was also able to provide a fact sheet that could be sent around on the reality of puppy mills, how other small animals are also affected by mill type manufacturing technically, and just what that meant for the town and the solutions that could come with that. So we were extremely lucky that both of these bans passed, and we were really happy to hear that and excited to see local change in animal welfare when it was kind of paused at the state level. And then from that, Amherst actually heard of the positive success in Wilmington and reached out to us to try and arrange something for their coming town meeting. So the last I checked on it, we were still trying to set a date and some official orders for it. But again, I was able to help by preparing an alert email so that when we do have all the specifics down, that can go out immediately and we can try and get people on board to be active in their town meeting as quickly as possible. So that was really exciting for me. Another really great aspect of my summer with the MSPCA was I got to explore the depth of their professional networks. So I think this was particularly important because growing up, we are told that business and work and companies are all in competition with each other. And I learned through this that with advocacy, it really could not be more false. So we worked extremely closely with the Humane Society of the United States and the Animal Legal Defense Fund. And we did this by having a lot of calls together and just keeping each other updated on what projects we were focusing on, what conferences we were focusing on, what bills we wanted to push forward, and just sharing as much information with each other as possible. This way we can present ourselves to the legislature as a united front, all on the same side of animal welfare and public health, instead of everyone focusing on different things. And so I really enjoyed being able to meet all of these people from different organizations who had the exact same mission. I also had the opportunity to help with a project for ALDF, and that was through doing some live market research. So as Michaela actually mentioned a little bit in her presentation, there is kind of this thought that we don't have live markets or wet markets in the United States. And what a live or wet market is when you can go into a shop, the animals are there alive, you pick out the one you want, and they slaughter in the back and bring it out for you. This is obviously extremely related to COVID. And so what the ALDF was interested in doing was researching the existence of these markets in states throughout the US so that they could come forward to the government saying, these exist, these are a problem, and there needs to be regulations around them. So I was assigned 4 states that I essentially Google hunted to find the existence of any markets that were of this nature in the states. And of all 4 states that I researched, I found at least one, up to I think 5 or 6 existing in that state, proving that they really are prevalent within the United States. This is not just a foreign concept, and it does need to be handled in our own society. So I was happy to be able to help with that. And then, of course, as everyone else did, I attended webinars and conferences from other organizations where I was able to learn a lot about the new shelter regulations in Massachusetts, or the history of Massachusetts legislation. And I attended one that even talked more about the connection between domestic violence and animal cruelty, which was exciting because we talked a lot about that in our animal law class. So again, I think it's just from this really important to emphasize the connected nature of advocacy and being able to talk with as many people as you can to be able to make the best impact that you can. So that was really exciting for me. So how I spent the majority of my time was pretty much entirely online. The MSPCA has a lot of websites, a lot of web pages within their website, providing information to the public on different welfare issues, different health issues, or even different ways that they could get involved. And because the MSPCA is typically so busy, they haven't had as much time to update these with new information. So I was able to do that a bit this summer. So a lot of that was just fact checking their web pages. I did a lot on their farm animal welfare pages and their lab animal welfare pages. And what this meant was just reading through all of them, and then anytime there was information presented, I would fact check it to make sure it was true, find the source, and link the source on a Google Doc so that we could go back to it in the future and remember where we got that information from. And anytime there was an update of just something new technology or new techniques that are used, I would put that in as well. But I was also provided the opportunity to create entirely new websites where we saw fit. So I created a page on the connection between farming and disease, which I'll talk about in a little bit more. And I even created a page on the legislative process in Massachusetts, so people would understand how the bill process goes through the state and they could be involved in it, where they can offer testimony and that kind of thing. So a big shout out to Dr. Ruffberg for the policy module that we all kind of muddled our way through at the very beginning of the year. It was definitely worth it for me. And then, of course, there was more online time. So with this, it was really just preparing information wherever possible. So I did a lot of research on the connection between deer hunting and Lyme disease. We found out that there's a little bit of a push to increase bow hunting within Massachusetts, and the reasoning behind that was primarily behind they were saying it would help control Lyme disease. So I did a lot of research on that to update the reality of bow hunting and its success rates, its wound rates, and how that connects to Lyme disease prevalence, how it spreads, how it is connected with deer and other animals, so that if there is legislation brought forward in the future, the MSPCA will already be prepared for it. Another topic that I covered was the idea of silent fireworks. Basically, they are low noise fireworks. So we were able to discuss this and write up a lot of information on it, so that when the time comes for towns or even the state to start thinking about fireworks again, we will already have this information ready to go, so that we can, again, be a little bit of a step ahead to provide the best opportunity for animals and for towns and for even people who are a bit more sensitive to fireworks. But also throughout all of this online Googling and writing and researching, I was able to really explore the interconnectivity of politics, which I think is extremely important, especially in animal welfare. I think we tend to think about the animals, care about the animals, and say enough people are thinking about people, we're going to focus on the animals. But what's true about all of this is that what's affecting animals is affecting people, and what's affecting people is affecting animals. So with everything involving COVID, I also was able to compile a list of resources for eviction in Massachusetts. And this was information on if you think you're going to be evicted, who to talk to if you're going to be evicted, where you could get monetary resources, and then again, resources for I'm being evicted, what can I do with my animal in the short term? I was also able to create and update our list of people practicing animal law so that we can have that ready to go. And again, this is also important because everyone cares for their animals. Most people who have pets are doing their best to take care of them, and keeping people in healthy situations is going to help keep animals in healthy situations. And I was really honored to be able to work on this and provide resources that are helping both humans and animals to show kind of that One Health aspect that Michaela was talking about earlier. Our presentations kind of overlap, so I'm sorry. Yeah, and then as a study break, not a study break, but a work break, this is how I spent some of my time when I wasn't staring at my laptop. These are just 2 puppies that I helped a friend foster while I was working at the MSPCA. They were little pitty mixes, and they were just the absolute sweetest. I really enjoyed them. So when it came time to choose my topic for my final paper, I had been really inspired by the information I learned while I was researching about farms and their related nature to disease outbreak and just the relevance of all of it. So I wrote about the antibiotic use in hog farms, specifically CAFOs, which are concentrated animal feeding operations, which if you know of a factory farm, it's basically a synonym for that kind of. And so it's just really large farms, typically with really small area. So I'm going to talk about a few of the points that I thought would be the most interesting to talk about from my paper, and that would be the problems of antibiotic use, the relevance of antibiotic use, and some solutions that I found. This was all from a literature review, some meta-analysis, and just a lot of Googling. So there are 3 main problems that I see with antibiotic use in hog farms. The first one being that the antibiotics used for hogs are all nearly identical to the antibiotics used for humans. So this is extremely important as I touch on the next few topics, which look into the existence and the emergence of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, because as this bacteria becomes resistant to the antibiotics in hogs, these are the same antibiotics that we are using in humans. So how this happens is that hogs are typically given what is called subtherapeutic administration. And what that is it's super low dosage regular administration. So this is low dosage antibiotics given in their feed and water every day. The hogs typically end up not digesting all of these antibiotics fully, and so not only do they have these antibiotics just kind of sitting in their body regularly, it is also now showing up in their waste. And anyone who has done a lot of studies with hog farms knows that there's also the issue of hog pink lagoons. And what these are large bodies of water that the waste is dumped into from farms, and they get their pink color from the bacteria that live in the lagoons. The bacteria are purposefully placed there to help eat at the waste. But the issue now comes as the waste holds all of this low dosage antibiotic material. So the lagoons and the pigs, together with these low doses of antibiotics, create essentially the perfect vessel for bacteria to evolve to these antibiotics and become antibiotic resistant. Now, again, this becomes an even bigger problem in CAFOs, as all of the animals are in such tight quarters and they have all been bred to be practically genetically identical. So this means if a couple of pigs become infected with an antibiotic resistant bacteria, it will extremely quickly spread through the entire herd. So a lot of the studies I read showed that if you have the prevalence of antibiotic resistant bacteria at all, it is most likely to be present in the entire herd. Now, again, talking a little bit about what Michaela touched on, is that pigs happen to be genetically similar enough to both hogs and humans that it is extremely easy, hogs are genetically similar enough to both wildlife and humans that they can contract diseases from wildlife or antibacteria, or they can contract disease from antibiotic resistant bacteria, and it can spread to both wildlife and humans, and then that can spread extremely quickly for a community. Now, the relevance of this seems a little bit obvious while we're in the middle of COVID, but the matter is one extremely popular strain of antibiotic resistant bacteria is MRSA, and MRSA rates are increasing, and studies have shown that most MRSA hospitalizations are from a swine strain. And the issue with this, as Michaela touched on, is the fact that we are not prepared. We are not prepared for another massive disease outbreak. We are not prepared for antibiotic resistant bacteria to overtake our communities, and our reliance on agriculture at this massive production level is extremely high. However, there are some solutions and being taken. One is that the FDA has been and continues to work to remove the use of antibiotics in farms that are identical to the antibiotics used in humans, so that if there is an outbreak, it hopefully won't be directly related to human antibiotic use. There is some pushback on this, as antibiotics are used for production purposes of increasing weight, and so farms are pushing back because they are nervous that this will decrease their monetary income. But there are some other steps that we can take, which is shifting more towards smaller farms with more genetic diversity. So as an outbreak comes, the pigs may have more space to keep from each other, they can be quarantined, and they're genetically different enough so that if one pig gets sick, the entire herd doesn't get taken down with it. But also just relying on the proper food, shelter, and entertainment that hogs require. These types of settings will show that it can alleviate stress in pigs, making them less likely to become sick, which then reduces our reliance on antibiotic use in hogs. So it's not entirely bleak, but I do think it's something that is, especially with COVID, extremely important to keep our eyes on, and something that we should be just really preparing in any way we can to fight off. So now I just want to say thank you to quite a handful of people. I first want to thank Dr. Rutberg and Shauna for being my mentors throughout the academic year and this summer at the MSPCA. I want to thank the MSPCA for letting me join them on this very different looking summer. Kara Holmquist and Melissa Gallagher really went out of their way to make sure I was meeting as many people as I could and getting my hands in as many things as possible to have a really enjoyable summer. I want to thank the Tisch Summer Fellows Program for funding my internship and also providing two other mentors. I worked with two MAPP alum, Julia Seeley and Leah Whitcomb. They were extremely useful in getting me through summer and making sure that I wasn't panicking that I was doing everything wrong, and they were just really great to have around this summer. I want to thank all of the professors that I have this semester for helping prepare me for this internship, and I want to thank Ginny for keeping us all together and on track. We would definitely be underwater without you. And of course, I just want to thank the rest of my classmates from the class of 2020. We all kept in touch over the summer. It was really great to see that everyone was doing exciting things and supporting each other, and it made for a really wonderful experience. So thank you to everyone, and I will now take any questions.
Can you see the question in the chat? Do you want me to read it to you?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, so Dr. Jackman has a question.
Yeah.
She starts with, thanks, Blythe, nice presentation. The organizer in me has to ask, for the local ordinances, were you cold calling people on MSPCA lists, lists from prior campaigns, voter lists, or something else? What types of responses did you get?
Yeah. I worked on, the MSPCA has a constituent list that you can sign up for, and I also worked on the HSUS list. So I ended up doing, I think, a couple hundred calls over the summer, and I definitely got a mixed bag of responses. A lot of people hung up on me, for sure. One person, when I talked to them about the exotic animal ban in circuses, she said, I'm not going to take the animals out of circuses. That would be boring. And I said, okay, that's fine. Have a great day. But I also did get a lot of really positive responses. A lot of people were interested in hearing more information. I had one really nice experience where a woman I called was actually calling her friends about the town meeting. It was her best friend that started the local ordinance in her town, and she was thrilled to hear that the MSPCA had taken up this issue and was also helping to call people. And she was really grateful. So even hearing that one extremely positive response allowed for like some endorphins to kick in to help me keep going through some of the less positive responses. And regarding the opportunity for a follow-up call, we did only call people once, but anyone who was on our list with an email also received an email on it. And if they did answer the call and asked for more information, they would get another email. So there were probably 3 or 4 different emails going out, but only one phone call.
Any other questions?
Did you have an opportunity for any follow-up calls after your initial calls? In other words, if people needed more information or they wanted, were you able to do any follow-up calls? Did you have time to do that?
We didn't do follow-up calls, but we always did follow-up emails if people were interested.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we find that people don't like us calling them that often, but they definitely respond better to emails, because if they don't want anything, they'll just ignore it instead of telling me to go away.
It's a very thankless task, cold calling, so good for you for having the patience to do it.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Blythe. Our next speaker